All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining today's webinar tonight. Today, we're going to be talking about APIs and really the ABCs of APIs, which I didn't come up with that, but I thought it was super clever. One of our marketing folks did. And that's exactly what it's all about today is just the ABCs. What are the basics of an API? What is an API? What is everybody talking about with them? And how do they apply to you and, of course, this industry as a whole? So I'm Johnny Yarbrough, Appulate's MGA and carrier specialist. I've worked with all of our carriers and MGAs on our platform. If you're not familiar with who Appulate is, I'm going to get into that in just a little while after we get into APIs for a bit. And then I'll also show a demo of our system and show you how we utilize APIs as a technology company that's focused on connecting agents and their markets on a single platform. So at a very high level, that's what Appulate does. But that's not necessarily the focus today. Today is just to kind of go over the basics again of what APIs are. This is not going to be a super technical conversation. We're not going to dive in super deep. This is not for IT folks necessarily. This is just really for folks like me who before I've been talking with a lot of folks about how to use APIs and how we connect to them, but really couldn't give a very simple definition of what they are. So we're going to go over that today. And then, of course, before I get started, let's go over some quick logistics. On your side panel, you should have a couple boxes there I want you to focus on, and that's going to be the chat box and the questions box. So if you have anything you want to say or any questions, everyone's going to be muted during this webinar, so please type that in there. I've got it open up on another screen, so I'm going to be constantly looking at that and checking on it. So if you have any questions throughout the webinar today, please, I won't think you're rude. Just ask that question. I'll check on it and I'll answer it whenever I can. So don't feel like you have to wait until the very end. Because like I said, we're going to get into APIs specifically here at the beginning. I'm going to talk about how that applies to Appulate and show you a demo of what we do with them. So let's get started. First of all, what is the official definition? If you go to Google and type in what is an API, funny enough, that would be an API. Basically, an API is an acronym for Application Programming Interface. And so in that situation, Google is actually a good example of an application you would go to online. The interface is what you're seeing, and that programming that is allowing data to kind of go back and forth is exactly what an API is. We interact with APIs on a regular basis. If you've got a cell phone or if you've got a computer, which I assume everyone does since you're on this webinar, when you go and you type something into a form and data comes back, you're interacting with an API. That data is being hosted somewhere else, and kind of like television broadcast, when you select a channel on the TV and you say, hey, I'd like to see this show, it says, gotcha, we're going to bring this content back to you, and now you're seeing it. That's essentially what an API is, and I've got another good metaphor I'm going to go through here in a second. But this official definition goes into it saying it's a software intermediary that allows two applications to talk to each other. And that's extremely important because what we're going to be getting into today is how you can develop an application or how a user could be interacting with you, and you could have two different applications working in harmony to give that user the data that they're looking for. Also, the second part of this definition is that APIs are a simplified way to connect your own infrastructure through cloud-native app development, but they also allow you to share your data with customers and external users. A lot of technical jargon in here, and we don't have to go too deep into that, but basically what this is saying is, hey, it's going over the internet. It's cloud-based, so it's not directly like if you were calling someone and it's let me kind of back up a little bit. Basically, again, Google is a great example of this. You type something in, it's going through the cloud, it's going through the internet, pulling this information that exists there and bringing it back to you. And we can use these things to do a number of things. So let's kind of dig into that. But first, so I said, so what is an API? This is true. A lot of times you look at these definitions and all it does is it seems to confuse a little bit more. So I created this little cartoon here to kind of help better explain this. So API interfaces are a lot like restaurants. So first you sit down and you're taking a look at the menu. That's like visiting that web page with an API. Or let's say If you are a carrier, MGA, wholesaler, or you consider yourself, I'm going to call you a market, and an agent is coming to your website, you may have them go through a set of forms, or they may see your products or something like that. So the goal of an API is to give them a little bit more automation and interact with them in real time with possibly your backend system. So in this restaurant example, you sit down and you take a look at this menu, and then the waiter is going to come up and say, hey, what do you want? And that's kind of like going to the website and inputting that data. Then that waiter, who is in this case the API, delivers the information to the kitchen, which would kind of be like your back-end system. So this is kind of like if you've got a policy admin system, a rating engine, something that you've got built in the background, or something that's hosting all of this data, like all your rates and formulas, your appetite guide information, classes of business, what you write, what you don't write, your requirements, all of these kind of things. We can have that in the kitchen where you guys are typically operating. And that API is the way that we can kind of connect you to that customer. So again, that comes back, they bring that food or that data back to your table, and now you've got what you're looking for. And so this is a very simplified way of looking at it, but it's extremely accurate. And you could probably take this a little further, and you could, just like right now, while we're in this kind of pandemic world, most of the time you're going to a restaurant and you've got a QR code, so you pull it up on your phone and you go through a menu there, and you decide on what you want. And some restaurants I've seen, you can actually order the whole thing and pay and do everything from your phone. And that's actually probably the most accurate way, because that to describe APIs, because that is literally an API. So we can take that same kind of technology and we could offer that to agents to be able to utilize when working with you. And this does a number of things. So on this next slide, I'll kind of go into some of the benefits of this. So not specific to insurance, but APIs in general create a secure way to manage data. Since only a small amount of data is transferred upon request, and these are like data packets. So it's kind of on demand. That data is not necessarily hosted somewhere specifically where someone could get to everything, but it's hosted in a backend system. You still have all of the control over everything, and the user who's interacting with you is only really requesting very specific pieces of data. And so it is a much more secure way to do business. API also, they adhere to standards that are easily accessible, developer friendly, and understood broadly. And this is extremely important. I mean, I think one of the most important words that I've been using here recently is standardization. And so this is something that I think developers and tech folks really look for. I mean, when Appulate, for instance, we're working with somebody, everything we output is in XML format, or some folks ask for JSON. And the reason they're asking for these specific data formats is that we're already acquainted with these types of formats. We understand what these look like. Developers know how to build them out. We know what to expect. And APIs are also this way. It also helps us kind of develop them better and keep them more secure in certain ways. APIs are also treated like products that are developed, customized, tested, piloted. They're constantly adapted and managed ongoing for very specific audiences. And this allows you to actually, to the last point, they can be built once and distributed multiple times, which can cut down on IT costs. So those two things, I think, kind of go hand in hand. But they are treated like products. So oftentimes people will go buy this very specific API built for a very specific product to do a very specific thing. And hey, now we've got that. We can distribute this in multiple different ways, use it across different distribution platforms, and that's huge. And so I'll kind of expand on that a little bit, specific to insurance, because like I said, everything you're interacting with online is essentially an API. So a lot of times, this is a very broad term, and it could mean a lot of different things. So when we're talking about this specifically for insurance, what does this exactly mean? How can we utilize this technology? So the first thing that comes up all the time is returning real-time rates and pricing indications. I think this seems to be one of the most simple, straightforward, and number one thing that people want, both on the agent and market side, is just to be able to offer real-time rating or some kind of instant calculator. So basically, just to kind of give you an idea, instead of an agent emailing you and saying, hey, this is what we've got. We want a workers' comp quote. We've got 10 employees and they're a trucking company in Indiana. What does the price of this look like? It's really hard to kind of figure that out. So you got to go back and forth and underwriting, get a bunch of information, and all this manual process could be actually done instantaneously by using technology. So we already would build this out, understand everything that's needed, and in real time hit calculators on the back end. So nobody's sitting there plugging things in, but the user is able to see that information in real time based on a number of different factors. The second thing would be on automating underwriting tasks. So like I mentioned, instead of going back and forth, you could create really all of the underwriting tasks in the back end to create an API-driven automated underwriting platform for an agent to interact with. And so that's what Appulate does in a big way. So Appulate would give the agent the ability to move data into our system, interacting with your API so that right away they're answering questions. We know exactly what kind of questions are required. If they answer a question, that data is now basically inputted and is hitting your backend system and returning a reaction, which might be, we need follow-up questions, or we need you to expand on this or to complete an extra form, or it may adjust the pricing indications, or it may tell them, hey, sorry, this doesn't fit our appetite guide. And that kind of goes to number 3, which is instantly communicating appetite information. And now we're getting really fancy because not only are we doing rates and pricing indications, but underwriting and appetite information. So what else is there really in the process during the submission process for quoting that an agent is really going to need information for? I mean, they should be able to, by having all 3 of those, produce an instant quote, at least an indication, and hopefully a bindable quote. And this has been happening for a long time. If anybody interacts with like personal lines, or you go to carrier portals online and you've seen this kind of interaction, this is really what's happening. Now, the beautiful thing about this is, in those cases, a lot of times if you go to a carrier portal and they already have all of this kind of infrastructure built out, that's really cool. But let's say they want to interact with somebody like Appulate. Well, that's really awesome because now we can do the exact same thing that carrier website would do. So if you are a carrier MGA and you're doing this in the backend system, or you have a system built for agents, we don't have to replace it. We build an API and we're basically connecting to it. That allows you to distribute those products to other types of product distributors, and that would be someone like Appulate. And that's actually the next point. To me, this actually is a lot like Expedia. If you've heard me talk at all, you know I'm going to bring up this example, but it's a perfect example. So instead of going to American Airlines or United or Southwest or whoever it might be, individually going to every single website, going through their entire form and getting ticket pricing information and times and dates and all this, that's a lot of work. You could go to somewhere like a Kayak or Expedia and see everything at one time in one place. And to users, this is really great. Obviously, there are going to be folks that they say, hey, all I do is fly with America. That's it. American, that's all I'm going to fly with. And so you could go directly to that. And that would be similar to some agents who only work with one market, perhaps. But that's not usually the case. We know that's not usually the case. Oftentimes, we may be even dealing with wholesalers who are going to 10 different carriers. So we want to be able to create this kind of platform, and that's what Appulate does, where folks can go in and interact with everybody simultaneously. And we've actually found that this is a much more effective way to distribute your products. We see about a 245% submission increase alone just from having this kind of ecosystem built where someone can go into a place and interact with everybody all at once, even though your competitors may be there. And this is like Expedia or a shopping mall or any kind of example where you go into one place and you're interacting with multiple outlets all at once. And we do see that people react a lot better to that. And if we can connect to APIs in this kind of way, you still maintain the control on the back end, which is that next point. So you could adjust the rates as often as you want, which we all know that that's certainly a thing. Let's say tomorrow you don't want to take any trucking risks anymore. You can change that on your side. And you could have your API distributed to 10 different places, and in real time, it's going to update with your new rates, your new appetite information, everything all in once. So this allows you to basically be kind of like that radio broadcaster, and everyone else is just consuming that data and interacting with it in real time. So it is just that connection between points. And that goes back to that initial definition when it was saying, hey, this allows basically connectivity between two completely different systems with having the same kind of information and allowing you to interact with more users. And that goes to the last one. I said agents love this, and it's true. This improves overall experience and efficiency, and this is on both sides. All right, so not just on the agent side, because obviously we want to make agents happy and we want to give them a really good experience when working with us, but also on your side, this is a whole lot less manual entry, zero. If you really want to do the whole thing, you could have somebody interact with your programs 24/7 at any place directly from their job site if you're consumer direct, or even with an agent. Just having them have that ability allows them to be more effective, but they're not having to go back and forth with you. You're not having to waste a lot of time with that. And we've seen personally a number of startup companies now who are completely API focused because it seems like that is the most efficient way to do things. Like I said on the right here, this little note, you can immediately improve and future-proof legacy systems by using APIs. So imagine if you do that right away. This is what a lot of folks are doing. I think right now the going rate on average to contact a company and build an API is in like the $20,000 range. It seems like it's getting a little bit more cost effective. There are more companies that are doing this. There's a lot more competition out there. Some folks are building these in-house. There are a number of companies, kind of like how websites used to be. You used to have to be an engineer, a programmer to build a website, and now you could go to a place like Wix or one of these other providers and just kind of build it yourself. And so we're seeing a lot of folks starting to do that in-house as well. And of course, for a much larger company, this is a no-brainer. This is starting to become a standard operating procedure at this point to build this out with your resources. So you only really have to do it one time, let's say per API. And so then you can interact with a number of different partners or distribution partners or other technology platforms out there, and not have to completely build out a new rating system and completely new portal every single time. And that's a little bit about what Appulate does as well. So we kind of create this standardized platform that everyone's used to. It stays the same and very consistent every time. And then we interact with your API, so we deliver all that real-time information. So even if you were to deliver this to Vertafore and Appulate and Data Cubes and iEngineering, whoever else out there who's doing very similar kinds of things, you could send it to everyone and really meet agents where they are, no matter where they are. So let's kind of continue here. One of the things I mentioned before is that this does create a good user experience, and this isn't just anecdotal. I do a survey, and Appulate does surveys of agents every single year. I've done this for the last 5 or 6 years now, and so every time I do that, I just add more data to it. And one of the questions that we always ask is, what are you looking for from your MGA or carrier? And this is extremely important. So what are agents looking for? This last survey I sent out to about 100,000 agents. This was the response, and this has been in line with every year. I've just kind of added up all of the responses, and this is still in order. So number one is instant quoting capabilities. Clearly, we can do that with an API. We can connect to a back-end rating system and immediately deliver instant quoting capabilities up front. Competitive rates and quotes, that's on you guys. That's your program. Fast quote turnaround, that's the tech part. We can make everything extremely fast. It doesn't get faster than real time. Better commission is number 4. No surprise there. Number 5 is online questionnaire. Then we've got automated underwriting, quote on a single platform, shorter questionnaires, personal touch and service, extremely important, and a core data intake without manual entry. So all of these things, if you look at it kind of big picture, agents want 2 things really is what it comes down to. They want well, 3. Let's say 3 things. They want a good program, they want it fast, and they still want some level of personal service. And this is all doable when we're talking about expanding our technology and kind of future proofing it by adding APIs to what we already use. This means we don't have to change any of the backend systems. We don't really have to do anything completely different. Let's just build a way to connect to a platform like ours, where I've got a star next to everything I think Appulate does, which is all that instant quoting, good experience on a platform, being able to manage all their data in one place, have a shorter questionnaire, a core data intake. We actually can do that from any agency management system. So we've kind of expanded that a little bit. So all of these things creating a good tech environment, which is awesome, except for no one's going to use Appulate if we don't have good programs in there. And then no one's going to do either one of these things if we don't have a way to have good personal service. So what we've seen with a lot of our carrier MGA partners is that they've offered these programs in our system, and they've had more time to devote to these other things, like being able to reach out and administer better service to these agents or consumers directly, or retrain certain folks, where now instead of having someone who sits there and just does manual entry all day, we can completely automate that, take that off of their desk, and we don't have to outsource data entry. We don't have to do any of that stuff. We have it completely automated. We get rid of forms, digitize the entire process so the questionnaires are simple, and then have these folks who are, instead of doing underwriting and data entry and all of this stuff, we can have them doing other things, which could obviously bring your agents a whole lot more value. So here's some actual numbers behind this. I mean, we've done this long enough now and worked with hundreds of different carriers. We've got some numbers around what this actually looks like, what kind of time is saved. Again, based on reaching out to hundreds of thousands of agents, understanding how many submissions they're processing a month on average. What does this actually look like? How much time is this really saving them? And then trying to put a dollar figure on this, because I don't know about you, but that certainly is the best way for me to kind of look at something and go, wow, this is really worth it. So it looks like on average, conservatively, about 40 submissions a month per agent. You could extrapolate that if you get more or less. Average time saved per submission with Appulate on the agent side is about 37 minutes, again, conservatively. Folks said hours, some folks said days, but that really skewed it. Most folks said anywhere between like 30 to 45 minutes, so I kind of picked something in the middle. Average time saved per agent per month, it ends up being about 25 hours, and based on the average salary of an agent, that's about $7,000 a month per agent. So that's really huge. And it makes sense. I mean, imagine hiring someone who just does data entry alone, or is a CSR that's all they're doing is some of the stuff that we're talking about here. That is essentially a wage of an employer to or more, depending on how they're hired and how often they work. But that's a huge amount of time savings, and that obviously means dollars as well. So on the market side, now this is really cool. I try to develop a calculator, same kind of thing. So if the average submissions received per line of business is about 500, this is, again, if you're dealing in volume, then we see bigger numbers here, right? So I think on average, some of these larger companies, we're seeing between like 500 to like 1,000, medium to large companies receiving and managing submissions. Obviously, also, this is really important. If we're able to do a lot of the underwriting up front, this means more transparency, and it also means less unqualified submissions. So you're not having to sort through a bunch of junk. You're getting stuff that fits your appetite guide exactly. You get all of the information that you need. So that saves a tremendous amount of time up front. But then now, once you have that data, being able to either create a quote, or to send this out to your various carrier markets, all of these things, now that you've got that data, you could either spit that data back real time to that agent, completely save all of the time that it takes to do it, or at least you have that information and can send it out to where it needs to go, whether that's your back-end system or to your carrier portals. And that's going to save a tremendous amount of time. So these calculators are a little bit complicated, but on average, it seems like about 90 minutes is a really good way to say. So it saves you about an hour and a half per submission, both on the front end and on the back end. And I think that's pretty conservative. considering, when I was an underwriter, I would work with somebody back and forth for days, or even a week to make sure we have everything we need, and interact with all the portals and all the data going back and forth. So if it is 90 minutes, that's about 750 hours per agent per month. I'm sorry, well, per underwriter per month, I should have said, if they're dealing with that, or per company per month. And then that translates to about $21,000 a month. That's massive. I was talking with somebody the other day because we were going through this, and they asked me, well, how can markets afford to not do this? And that's a tricky question, because you obviously have to have some resources up front to build some of these things out. But if I told you again, it's going to cost $20,000 to build an API, and another $20,000 to connect it to a distribution platform somewhere else, and that's just upfront cost to build things out, you're really looking on a return on investment in 2 months, and that's huge. And so I think one of the things that people are trying to do, to be competitive, and I can talk for Appulate specifically, is to try to cut down that time as much as possible, or create these standardization techniques so that when we're building this out, the amount of engineering is far less and we can keep our pricing low. And so we've been able to successfully do that. I think most of the time when we're connecting to, let's say, an API, we can do that on a line of business in like 60 to 90 days. And then we've got testing and piloting and all this stuff, but this is no longer a 6-month to a year-long process. Now, this is of course dependent on if that API works, if everything is very clean, if you guys are delivering on your side. We can do that pretty quickly, and I'm seeing that this is the trend right now. People are able to build out APIs a lot faster than they used to. We connect to them a lot faster than we used to, and these costs are actually kind of going down. And so obviously cost overall of everything right now it just kind of trends up all the time. But just like websites and other kinds of technology, I think we're going to see a little bit of both playing against each other, where there's going to be a lot more competition. We've got to get a lot more competitive about these kind of things. And I think where we get competitive also is, how many agents are we going to distribute this to? How quickly can we get it out to them and educate them on this? There's so much more that's involved in that. And so a lot of resources are needed just beyond building out that technology. But I wanted to share this because it is affordable if you look at it in the right kind of lens. Feel free, by the way, at any time, you always ask questions on here if you have any questions about this. I'm going to get into Appulate and how we kind of build this out, what it looks like on our side. But if you want to connect with me offline at some point, please feel free to. I've got a pretty complicated calculator I could put together. We could throw in your number of submissions and see what this would look like, and totally free. I'm happy to do this. I think this information is very helpful. So who is Appulate? I've kind of lightly talked about us here and there. I have the slide up, so if you guys, this is recorded, so I'll be sending out the recording, and if you ever want to take a look at this, feel free to dig into it, or contact me. We could talk about who we are specifically. But we've been around since 2005, so about 16 years now, and we currently work with about 80% of retail agents in the country, hundreds of MGAs and carriers, wholesalers who have connected to us and distribute their products on our platform. And like I mentioned before, we provide this ecosystem where an agent goes into our system from whatever agency management system, doesn't matter at all. We work with all of them. And any Accord form version, line of business, doesn't matter. Wherever they've got that data, they're able to hit a button, land in our system. Now all their data's there. And now, based on how we're connecting to you, whether we're going to send them to your portal, we could do that. We could connect to your API, we could do that, or we can build it specifically right within our system. All of these different types of implementations have different kinds of costs and different amounts of time it takes to build out. But there is a massive trend for APIs, and the reason why I'm doing this whole webinar, it does seem like everyone always says, everyone's always talking about this, but literally it does seem like everyone is talking about this. This is the way to do business now. We've got to build out some way to connect to you. And the reason, again, I think for most MGAs and carriers specifically, is they want to still retain some of that control on their side. Traditionally, if we built out a rating function in our system or questionnaires, that's really cool, but now it's all hosted inside of Appulate. And if you want us to change a rate or change a question or something, you've got to reach out to us. Our engineers have to change that. And now it's ready in a day or two, where if we connect to your API, you make those changes on your side, it reflects real time. Someone could be mid question on our system, and they're going to see a change based on what that API is doing. So it's a very cool technology, and it does offer, I think, what most people want, and what they feel like they're kind of missing out on when they're dealing with a technology company like Appellate. And like I said before, agents are statistically more than twice as likely to submit to a market available in Appellate, and that obviously offers the biggest distribution opportunity available in the industry. And right now we have more agents, more active in a single system than anybody else out there. So it's about 280,000 independent retail agents. About 100,000 of them are subscribed to mailing lists that, and so we do webinars, and we'll put out emails about our partners, and hey, here's what's going on, here's how you can connect to them, here's who's offering an API, whatever it might be. And we get a huge reaction from that. And I'll kind of go over this Appellate workflow, and I've got some statistics to back that up. But here's what our workflow looks like. Like I mentioned, it comes right from their agency management system about 80% of the time into Appellate. They interact with our portal, which includes appetite guides, smart questionnaire, which is dynamic. I'll show you that. Instant indications, appointments, signatures, real-time pricing, instant quotes, binding, all of it. All of this gets translated into XML, so you can push this into your backend system. So even though that API is interacting and everything's happening in real time, all of that's getting stored. Everything is user and time-stamped. Everything is accessible. You can pull reports, check everything, and all of the data can be translated into XML and sent to your backend system, which is really cool. Proven results. Here's those stats I was talking about. So since 2016, which is really where we saw a lot more API-driven submission workflows. We put a lot more resources into our marketing efforts at Appellate. Really let people know, hey, this is what we're doing. This is what we've got going on. It skyrocketed. I mean, within this first couple of years, we saw like a 500% increase in markets being selected by Appellate, which is on the left, where an agent literally goes in and manually selects a new market to start working with because now they're available in our system. And those are all separate interactions. Every one of those numbers there is an agent going in and manually selecting a new market to work with because of something that we've put out or something they've put out saying, hey, now we're available in the system. We know you're there. Now you can access us. And so we've seen huge success with that. You can see how fast that just it blasted off once we made that kind of workflow available. And then we've seen a huge increase in logins as well. I mean, every year we break our own records with login activity, and it just kind of comes down to making agents educated and inspired to go into our system and interact with the markets that we've got available. They're so happy to see that markets are taking a much more tech-driven approach, and that they're not trying to get agents to all come through their own proprietary forms and processes and systems and everything else, but rather a much more accessible way where they can interact with them from right where their data is and where they're managing their submissions. So what does it look like? So let's take a quick look. I'm going to do just a very high level demo and show you exactly what this looks like. And of course, schedule some time with me if you'd like to, and we can go through a demo much more specifically to what you guys are doing. But for today, I'm going to do this workers' comp application. You can start from an agency management system or from here, hit a button, select Appellate, hit print. We use a print driver to make that real super simple. They can put in their login credentials. This would initiate any kind of single sign-on as well. So if you're not ready for all this API integration, but you have a form on your website and you want to take agents there, we can actually create a bridge where as soon as they go here, they can select the market directly and we can send them directly over. Most of the time, though, I will say this, they'll go right into our interface, because this is where most of the agents are managing their submissions, to the point where I call Appellate a submission management system. We're certainly not an agency management system or a policy admin system, but we're kind of an in-between system. So agents will store a lot of their information here. This is where they'll store most of their insured data, and of course interact with their market. So all they have to do is go up here, select the market they want to work with. So in this case, I'm going to select Westlake, GA. This is kind of my fake wholesaler here. And this way I can show you I could have a wholesaler here and have all of your carriers listed underneath. And this is kind of cool because what this allows is instantaneously, I could select multiple markets, and based on that market's criteria, it's going to tell me how many questions I need to answer, what that pricing may look like, if it meets the appetite guide. So all of this transparency, of course, up front, like I mentioned, allows the agent to make more informed decisions and decide who and how to work with whoever. So if AmTrust says, yeah, we're not going to take this, is declined, and it says because of a class code, I could unselect that, and now I don't have to answer as many questions. So this saves a tremendous amount of time. And right away, like I just showed you, it's telling me exactly what kind of questions need to be answered, exactly how this fits in that appetite guide by that letter, which is either going to say D for declined, a referral to underwriting, or it's going to be A for accepted. And so right away, they're going to know that, and they're going to know how to proceed with you. So real quick, got a quick question. So was that a print plugin in Adobe PDF that connects to Appellate program? Yeah, so our print driver actually gives you a bunch of different options. You can, we have an Outlook extension. You can have an application right on your desktop. And it also works in like PDF. And it also works in an agency management system. So again, kind of wherever you want to be, you'll download that specific driver and then kind of follow through. And it really only takes about a minute to do that. So that's a really good question. But yeah, so right away, this is telling me declined because of this. So I can go up here and now I can actually fix this. And I use an old Accord for this very specific reason. I want you guys to see that it's not perfect. I can go in here and I'll need to fix some of this information so I can move forward. And right away, I mean, this is stuff that we see all the time where something has been incomplete, someone hasn't filled this out, is an old Accord form or old loss runs or whatever it might be that aren't applicable. So this allows us to have that instant communication with them. So again, we're not having to go back and forth. And we have this instant rating information. So I can open this up. We can have this broken down however you want to. And this is all being fed via API. So someone's got this information in their backend system, or it's hosted in the cloud, and this information is instantly available in our system. And you saw it kind of updating there. That's exactly what it's doing. So in the background, all of this is happening. So now I could go through here and I can answer all these questions. For instance, underwriting questions. I got 2 here, it looks like. So I could find those questions, answer them right away. And what's really cool about this is because we're having this kind of dynamic questionnaire that's based off of the information that they put in, we can create a way to have a questionnaire be very, very specific to only the data that they're putting in. So there's no guesswork at all. So if they put in a certain class code, it's going to see exactly those questions. So here I finished 2 questions. Now I don't have any more underwriting. However, if I go in here and add my other location and I select another class code to work with, so instead of class code 35, I select just 5. I'll just put 1 employee in here and I'm going to pay them $30,000. And so now if I scroll up, now I've got 6 underwriting questions. So very specific to what I just did. And the reason I show you this is right away, I have completely eliminated any kind of supplemental forms that may be needed, any kind of proprietary forms. If you're an MGA with a very specific program and Accords just don't cut it, so you built out a form that you have agents fill out, throw them away. We can build a digital form that responds to their data in real time based off of your API or your requirements we build straight in here so that they have this kind of experience and they know exactly what to fill out. So now, it's saying ready to submit. This is accepted. I could go through the remainder of these, answer all of these questions. We can set up different kinds of requirements, both for, let's say, AmTrust specifically, and for you as a market. And this happens a lot of times too. So we work with AmTrust API, Hiscox, employers, I think Travelers now, and Liberty, and a bunch of other folks. So if you're working with them, good example is I have an MGA who does a very specific healthcare program with workers' comp, and an average agent cannot get that through the carrier, but they can offer it. It may show up declined if I try to go to AmTrust directly, but then I can select you and it'll say, oh, it's accepted because we do take this. Or in this case, it's declined because the FEIN has already been reserved. This has already been sent in. So this is another very cool thing. I mean, if we're connected to your systems in real time, then obviously we can feed this information as well. But if it is changed and it's been accepted, everything's good, it can be submitted right away, return an instant quote. Oh, excuse me. And return that instant quote. And then if everything's good, they can request to bind. And so we'll have different kinds of processes here where if they are good with that quote, we can have it submitted to underwriting. We can offer them the ability to bind here. And in other cases, like with Hiscox, I know they've got their binding process, I believe, still in Hiscox Now portal. And so if the agent goes in here and they say, yeah, I want to bind, we can then take the agent outside of our system, have them land there and finish that binding process. We've also been able to do premium financing in here, create open brokerage models where they can get a real-time quote, get answers to questions, and then when they're ready to quote, then take them through a binding process if they're appointed with you. If they're not appointed with you, take them through an automated appointment process as well. And this always includes e-sign and everything else. And the other thing that's really cool here, I'll also talk about is, let's say I'm an agent and I'm working with you and I've got the questions that you need answered, like I'll reselect AmTrust. And oh no, now I've got 9 questions I need to have answered. I could actually send this questionnaire, select just AmTrust, the sections required unanswered only, and create an email with a link that the insured could go to. So, and this actually interacts with us in real time as well. So this is kind of our way of utilizing APIs ourselves. So we could send this out, a customer or an insured could go right to their phone. They could answer these questions right on the job site. The agent will then see those answers populated right within the system, and they'll be able to see instant information about how that has been answered. So depending on how they might answer that and say, oh, we've got a 3.4 mod, it might go, oh, yeah, that rate's going to go up, and that will reflect right there. So that's just kind of a good example of all the way through how we're using APIs during different parts of that workflow to give as much real-time information to whoever's interacting with the system, and then of course try to make that submission process as quick as possible. So I'm like I said, I'm always looking at that question box. If you guys have any questions about this, please let me know, because otherwise this is kind of where I stop here. I just wanted to kind of do something high level. So I'll take a minute and kind of wait for that. I'll put up my contact information here in a second, although I will send you an email today or tomorrow, depending on how quickly this video will upload. All right, we did have a question come through. So who are you working with? Good question. So actually everybody right now could go to appulate.com/market-directory. You don't have to log in or anything, but it's going to take you to this page where you can search. Let's say we were doing workers' comp. You could select workers' comp. You could go right here and see all the names. So I'll scroll through this. Let me explain actually what these mean, Appulate, eSubmission, and WebLink, because you're going to notice some stuff says standard, some stuff says upgrade. So, and actually another question came up, how much do agents pay, or how does the finances work? So that's a good question. So I'll answer all of this at once. So basically, retail agents traditionally use our system at no cost. If they're trying to do more with our system and interact with markets that are outside of our, we'll call it our network, then they may have to pay a premium fee, or like get our premium version of Appulate so they can access that. And that would be markets like these that say WebLink. And what that is we've basically mapped out to that particular market's portal because of a huge amount of requests from our agents to work with that market. So you might get emails from me because I've reached out saying, hey, we've got a lot of agents who are interested in working with you. And I am dead serious. If you see your name on this list, if you're a carrier and you come here and you see, hey, Foremost, for instance, and we've got a web link built out, we need to be talking, because that means that there are enough folks that have requested us to build that we have gone ahead and put the resources together to create some kind of bridge between our systems to work. So that's extremely important. Please contact me. This means that we have agents trying to submit to you today. through our system. And so that's a really good way to kind of prove a concept and actually have some agents. We can pull a list, and we can, for any of you guys, we can pull a list and see how many of your agents are actually using our system, and get an idea of right out of the box what that's going to look like and who we might have pilot the system or we could get some feedback from. But to kind of go back to how these are set up, so that's WebLink. That's really that, and email submissions are the only ones that agents would have to pay for, because that's where we're not working with that company. We're just connected to them in some kind of way. It may just be an email submission where we're completing documents in the back end and sending those documents, or WebLink where we're mapping out XML data essentially to your portal as like a browser plugin so that it maps out that data in real time. Otherwise, you're going to see e-submission and you're going to see Appellate. So anything with Appellate is what I just showed you. That's everything is right within our system. Most of those, we're either building that directly in our system or it's API driven in some way to give that agent all of that real-time upfront stuff right within our system. E-submission is a little bit different, where we're going to still use your system. We'll take the agent over and all their XML data, send that to you. You guys map out that XML data however you want to. And then the agent goes through your portal like they would today, just of course, not having to key it in. All of these include the ability for you guys to use it internally. So if you have agents who say, nope, I hate technology, I'm going to fax you an Accord form, and that's all I want to do, we do have that built out. We've been around for 16 years, so that used to be the way to do it. That's how we started. So if it's emailed, faxed, we've got OCR, we've got the ability to intake and parse forms and extract data. We've had that for a very long time. So that is out of the box, ready to go, and could be turned on tomorrow. Doesn't require any engineering on our side. We've already done it a long time ago. Where there may be some engineering is sending that XML, and that just has to be mapped out. And typically customers will do that, or some third-party vendor, depending on your system. We do have connectivity to some policy admin systems like IMS Nexture and some others. So contact me if you want to check that out as well. But that's basically all of our connectivity descriptions. I don't expect you to memorize that, so please get in contact with me if you have any questions, and we can certainly go through that specifically for you. But I don't see any more questions up there right now. I'll put my contact information up here for a moment, and so that this is recorded so you guys can have this. And of course, like I said, I'll email you, and in my signature line, I'll have a book a time link, which is this right here, which is connected to my calendar. So feel free to throw some time on there directly, and I'll send you a Zoom invite, and we can kind of meet face to face virtually and talk about what you guys have got going on and maybe expand on this a little bit more. But looks like we're getting close to our time up. I don't see any more questions on there. Feel free to reach out to me. I hope this was meaningful and helpful to you guys. I appreciate everyone's time today tremendously, and look forward to talking to you here in the near future. I hope everyone has a great rest of your week, and stay safe.